Hi everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in once again. It's Wednesday night. It's time to answer some questions that you have been submitting. I encourage you, if you'd like to ask a question, you can send them to the church's email address. That's tompkinsvillecoc@gmail.com. My good friend Jesse Frank Shirley is here with me this week. Jesse Frank, glad you could be here.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad that Jesse Frank could be here because this week's question really piggybacks on what we talked about last week. And for those of you that didn't know, last week I was asked the question, what can the church do to combat racism? So I spent some time talking about the value of each soul, how we're made in God's image, how the church is supposed to be colorblind, and I think we all understand that. This week the question asked, what is the church's responsibility for those who are marginalized, for, I don't know what the right word to use is, but for the needy, the poor, for the, if we want to say those who are on the outskirts of society, I don't think it's a detriment to their character. I think it's just a description that people will know. Well, Jesse Frank, I think it's easy to see in Scripture without even having to open it up and dig deep, that God is concerned about people we overlook, that God's concerned with every individual, no matter the value we put on them. That there's no one more important to God than anyone else. And because we're all made in His image, we all possess the ability to make right choices, make poor choices, to repent, to be all the things He wants us to be, even when we're not. So there's not really black sheep, white sheep in God's kingdom. There's just sheep. Now, sheep have a shepherd. That's Jesus Christ. And what does our shepherd show us by His interactions in this world? You know, He ate with sinners. He healed people who were blind, who were beggars, who were poor. He ate with tax collectors and sinners and spent time with those people that sometimes the church overlooks. And I don't know that we overlook them on purpose. And I don't even know that we overlook them here at our congregation. But as a general rule, it seems to be overlooked. I meet a lot of people who tell me the church doesn't do enough. And I try to ask them, well, what more can we do? And I think that's really the question that I think we should ask today. Who needs our help? And one of the reasons I'm so happy you're here, if you don't know it, Jesse Frank is an elementary school teacher. And you're going to teach
Third grade. I'm moving to third grade next year.
You taught fifth grade.
Just taught fifth grade this last year.
Jesse Frank knows about children in our community. And I've seen this, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I'm interested to hear your point of view for this. That children are very honest when they go without. And they'll tell you, I'm hungry. I'm cold. I slept last night on the floor. So from your experience alone, just working in the school system, what are some kids in our community missing? What are the opportunities that the school system, the church, or just a citizen of Monroe County could do to maybe make some of the kids who sat in your classroom their life better last year?
Well, one of the first things that really hit me hard when I started learning how to become a teacher is that there are certain needs that every student has, and they must be met before any learning can occur.
Sure.
And they have to have love, they have to have food, they have to have water, they have to have shelter. And I think our school does a great job of filling those gaps, but maybe not as much as they are able to fill. There's always going to be more and more and more to do. And I feel like those are areas that the church can help, but sometimes maybe the church doesn't know who to help. And, looking at the other side, it may be difficult to reach out and say, hey, we need these things. Or, different things come up, but as an educator, the number one thing that we can do for students is to make sure they have that love and then take care of those basic needs. Because, like you said, one of the worst things I've ever been told is first thing in the morning, Mr. Shirley, I'm hungry. It's a killer to hear that from a kid first thing, or that, man, there was a lot of noise going on in the living room last night, Mr. Shirley. It's heartbreaking, honestly. It's some of the most difficult things that I face that I don't know how to help in those ways, but the only thing I can do is take those few hours I'm with those students each day and give them the most attention, most love that I can.
you work with the school system, obviously. I get some interaction because of being the soccer coach. I know here in our community, the school system does a better job than I think maybe a lot of communities do, trying to feed kids who are hungry. Because it's a smaller community, the teachers seem to know the kids a little bit better. They're not just being shuffled through, and they don't just all have 40 kids per classroom. So you get to know them a little bit better.
Yes.
I love that you made the statement. Sometimes we just don't know where to help. I sometimes get very frustrated with that. I'm sure you might too. And if you're watching at home, I hope you are. That when you have more than you need and you want to be giving of your time or your energy, and you don't know where to give it. You know, you don't know a lot of people who are hungry. And you don't know a lot of people who don't have a warm house or a cool house in the summer. You know, sometimes your environment shields you from the people who need help the most, and their environment keeps them from the people who can help them the most. The school system is a great way to get to know them, and I'm grateful for all of our connections here to where we can reach out and we can find kids that can, for lack of a better term, maybe somewhat be adopted by the church and help. I would love it, though, if instead of thinking it having to be a church thing, that just Jesse Frank and Neil and just you would say, hey, I know Jesse Frank and I know Neil, and they know kids in the school system. What can I do to just help them? Just me. Don't leave it up to the church. Don't leave it up to the deacons or the elders or the preacher. Just say, I know there are kids in a classroom taught by someone I know. And I'm going to go to that person and I'm going to say, hey, do you have kids that need coats? Do you have kids that need new shoes? And even though there are people that provide that, I want to be here and provide it for one kid in your class. If every Christian family in our congregation adopted one kid in the Monroe County school system and said, this year, I'm going to buy them new clothes, school supplies, new shoes, and a warm coat. I mean, it probably costs us, what, $300, $400? That's $2, $3 a week. And I imagine that there are more than 200 needy kids in our community. You know, I look at being benevolent. And Jesse Frank, the reason I love that you could be on this is benevolence is not an us thing. It's a you thing and a me thing. You know, all of us can be exposed to different environments, right?
Absolutely.
And your environment's getting ready to change. If you don't know it, Jesse Frank's getting married in a month.
A month and change.
A month and change. So your environment's getting ready to change. And so there's going to be needs that you have to provide Kayla as her husband. And there are needs I have to provide my children and my wife because I'm their father and their wife. But then there are big communal needs that society's supposed to provide. The phrase is that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, do you ever see that at school to where sometimes kids need Jesse Frank and sometimes they need Miss Jessica and sometimes they need Miss Jamie. And it's not just you that can make their life better, but it's multiple people.
Absolutely. I think a school has a unique dynamic. And for every kid, it's different. Some kids will attach to me as opposed to Miss Parrier, who I worked with this last year. It's a interesting complex that goes on throughout the day and throughout the school year, how one kid who may not respond to me at all would, you know, be that, maybe have that mother-son dynamic with Miss Parrier or Miss Jessica or somebody else in the building.
Sure.
And, you know, it's real interesting to see how those relationships develop. And it amazes me how a kid can attach to a teacher or someone in the building instantly. One of the greatest compliments I've ever had from a kid is to be called Dad. You know, at the time it happens in the classroom, everybody laughs, oh, you called Mr. Shirley Dad. But, you know, honestly, I cherish that. To be considered in that light is just a great honor for me. And I really love that part of what I get to do.
As they go older and they start asking you for recommendation letters, when they start asking you to be a reference on their job applications, when they call you because they're getting married and they're curious, it grows. It makes you feel even better. What I love about that is I think that idea applies to the church as well. That in every one of our congregations, there are people who are good at something. And there are going to be naturally some that are good at reaching out. and they have a kind disposition. They have a heart that is a bit softer than others. Or maybe they're just more generous or able with their time. They just are. It doesn't mean the others are good for nothing and worthless, okay? I look at how we attack the needs of the community. And I think about how we're told that it's called pure religion. And the idea there is in its simplest form, the simplest idea of what you do in your following to God is you care for orphans and widows. Now, orphans and widows in the first century were the most marginalized people. So they were the ones that had no one to care for them, no one to provide for them, and no one to ask, what do they need? Well, we can ask today, what do you need? I can knock on someone's door. I can open up and say, what do you need? I don't have to put stipulations on it. I don't have to only give what I can give. I can ask, what do you need? And I can provide it. And when I ask, what do you need? I find that I might not be what they need, but maybe Jesse Frank's what they need. Or maybe Fowler's who they need. Or Dylan. Or Ashley. That's what I think sometimes the church misses. Is that we try to say that there's a one-size-fits-all area of benevolence and outreach and care. And we notice that's hogwash everywhere else. No kid learns the same. No kid gets his potential untapped on a sports field the same. No adult grows at the same pace in their work. Some are quick learners, some are slow learners. And so in our community, Jesse Frank, I think the school analogy is how the church should look to the world. And the church is a village full of talented people who can go. And they can welcome people into their lives and they can provide for them. Some need to teach English. Okay? Maybe not me and you, but some need to teach English. Some need to teach math. Some need to teach physics. Some just need to be custodians. But there's a need for all of us out there. The apostles. I love that Jesus called some people who were fishermen. Some people who were tax collectors. One guy who was a zealot, basically a first century terrorist. And he made out of that group of people who were a melting pot, his disciples. And they went into all the world, and they spread the gospel. Because what? The world's not full of people who are just like you and me and you at home. So that means our care and our benevolence and let's use the word, our care for society needs to sometimes look like Jesse Frank as a Christian in his classroom. Being an example for those kids of what a Christian man looks like, a Christian husband looks like, and a role model. I mean, sometimes I get to be the coach of the soccer team, and you get to be whatever you are. But our impact on society is not just felt by what we do here in this building. I think it's what we do when we go there. The Great Commission, what's the very first word? It's not stay here, it's go there. Go there. Be amongst the people. Create disciples. Teach them. And so I look at all of these examples of Jesus healing people, of Jesus feeding people. And I understand the concern we might have. That if I just feed their bellies, will they let me feed their soul? I get that. But Jesus fed an awful lot of bellies. And he healed an awful lot of wounds. And he told us, and I'm going to put reference to the passage on the screen, he told us, you have sick with you. You have naked with you. You have those who are in prison with you. Go take care of them. You always have. And so I would love for the social upheaval that's going on, right, to teach the church a very valuable lesson. The world needs us now more than ever. You look at all of these people who are your age protesting, and they feel like no one cares about them. Well, is that true? Of course not. But they don't know the people who actually care. And I don't think that's their fault. I think that's our fault. We have not done a good enough job of making sure they know we care. We want to be there for you. That we are here for you. And I can't help but believe that Jesus would be very disappointed in us. If we were called before him and he said, well, tell me what you did lately. And I said, well, I sat around waiting for them to come to me. I think he'd say, no, why didn't you go to them? you knew they were there. You knew they were there. So, I think that's a big key. You know, do you think, as a rule, and I know you talked about this earlier, do you think there's any reason why people are afraid to ask for help? Is there anything that seems, from your experience, drives it?
For me, I think it's a pride issue. And that's something I personally struggle with. If I'm having an issue with designing a lesson or something, I want to sit and bang my head against the wall until I figure it out. I'm not going to ask for my partner next door to help me. And letting go of that pride's a big issue for not just myself, but for a lot of people. And sometimes it's just, you got to let it go. You got to reach out. You got to stick out that hand and hope somebody grabs it.
Do you think
there's people there? It's just we don't want to reach out.
You think children struggle with that too?
I think it just depends on the child and depends on the situation. Now, if a kid, hopefully I've developed a relationship enough that, hey, they're willing to reach out to me. But there are instances, like I mentioned earlier, that maybe they don't want to talk to me about something. Maybe they don't talk to Miss Perry or Miss Jessica or even Miss Glenna in the building. It just depends from case to case, child to child. But I think, too, that sometimes it's just fear of maybe being told no, and maybe that's what they're getting at home.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to reach out and can at home, and then they think that's the same thing, or it's going to be the same way at school. But we try to make sure that they don't feel that way.
Right. I'm curious. Do you think there's a stigma from some people that it's not just I'm too proud to ask, I'm afraid of what will be thought of me if I do ask? Maybe not by the teachers, but by my friends. If they see me having to ask, do you think even at a young age some kids could struggle with that?
Absolutely. I mean, if use a classroom example again, if a student's constantly needing help on a subject, and I'm constantly spending 15 minutes a day with that student, other kids are going to take notice of that, and and I know our school doesn't have a big issue with bullying whatsoever, but still things are going to pop up where they say, oh, why'd you have to spend so much time with Mr. Shirley on that? And they do have that stigma, I guess you could say, just like maybe if I was in a bad position, I would feel that stigma too, that if I had to ask for help, I would be afraid of people looking at me in a different way, and I feel like that's the same way in the classroom.
We hate to ask for help, I think, as a society.
Absolutely.
And it's super hard then as the church to bear one of those burdens when we don't know you need help. To pray for each other, we don't know you need prayers to be answered. And magnify that times a million times for someone who's not used to church people. I give people a lot of credit who will come to the building and ask for help. Like, we're hungry, need food. I give them a lot of credit to at least they asked. Now, sometimes we're critical. We think, well, do they really need it? I don't really think that's our place. I think if someone says they're hungry and when we have it, we should give it. Not everyone agrees with me on that. That's okay. I don't care if we disagree on that. What I want us to be is thought of as people that when you need something, I go to it. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily that everyone does, but if I need it, if I run into that, and I can tell you, I believe that about us, but I know us. And I know that if my house burnt down today, if your house burnt down today, people would be there to help because they know you and they know the problem you're facing. How many prayers have we given, just think in the last year, for sweet John Luke, and now for Campbell, and for so many people who have so many heartaches in their life? We genuinely care and are concerned about it. I think sometimes, though, and you use the analogy, bang my head against the wall. I think we bang our head against the wall because we don't know how to help. And in some circumstances, we can't. We can't offer more help than what we're doing. Prayer is all we've got. But I just can't help but think that we are, as a big picture item, doing everything that we can be doing. And I want us to. And so I would like to encourage people like you, Jesse Frank, for those of you who are at home, that when you're in your workplace, you're in a high potential area to make a difference in someone's life, And I know there's some limitations between what we can do with the school and the church. I don't want you to cross any lines. I don't want to cross any lines. But I want us as church members, as Christians, to think, I'm in the world every day. So can I make the world a better place? If it's one person, one day, I made his world or her world a better place. To me, that's the key to this whole social justice thing. There are people in our world hurting, and we should be the people who are helping. And maybe that's oversimplifying a very complicated question, but I want the world, when they look at me and they look at you and they look at all of you at home, to say, when I need help, I turn to them. Because when Jesus walked this world, people cried out to him, Rabbi, Rabbi, save me, help me, remember me, the thief on the cross said, today when you go to paradise. I want them to say the same things to us. I know they'll do it in your classroom. I know they'll do it on the practice field with me. And I pray that as a general rule, they'll do it more to me and you and all of the church. And our congregation here and all the congregations across the world can be known as places of where the marginalized go to feel that they're not overlooked anymore. And, if that makes me a bleeding heart, I'll be one. When Jesus says you always have them with you, that means we have a responsibility always to try our best to take care of them. And so I want to go into the world and make disciples, but I also want to go into the world and make it a better place. And I don't think I'll get a chance to make disciples if I don't actually make the world a better place. And so to me, the two are tied together. And so I would encourage you, and Jesse Frank, I'm going to put up a bunch of Bible verses afterwards about how we help people and what we do and all that stuff. There's no doubt in my mind, there's no doubt in your mind, that we're supposed to help those. But I would encourage you, as I would everyone, to look for opportunities, wherever they might be. Don't wait for the preacher, don't wait for the elders or the deacons to show up and tell you, all right, go make that person's life better. Just do it. You'll get that chance, and you'll get that chance. And I pray that when we all get it, we'll do it. I really do. I think we can, and I'm grateful you're in the school system. By the way, we're a special situation here. We have two 20-something young men who both teach elementary school. I love it. And if I'd have been planning a little better, I had Dylan sit here with me. You could have planned for when a kid calls him dad for the first time. I can't wait to hear that story. It's a little odd
the first time you hear
it. It's not when it's your kid, but when it's another kid,
yeah.
I get that. That could be really strange. So I want to thank all of y'all for watching. Jesse Frank, I want to thank you for coming. Anything you want to let our viewers at home know?
No, I thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. Hope you maybe picked up something today.
We just want to be useful, helpful to the world, and we pray you do too. Make someone's life better today by feeding them, clothing them, caring for them. Just letting them know you're there. I think if you do that, you will have lived like Christ wanted you to live. You will have carried your cross, and you will have done what you were supposed to do. So let's make an effort to do that more wherever we'll be tomorrow. So thank you for listening. Have a wonderful night.